And after all the changes of life, isn't it good to know that the future is unwritten? Yeah, right? So the question is always, how do we write it? We write it with our choices. We write it with our choices. This unwritten story that we are continually writing for our lives, for ourselves, our family, our community, our nation, and our world. We are writing it with our choices, day in and day out. I ran away from home when I was 15. I lived on the streets for a year. I've had a foster family. And then I moved as far away as I could get from Philadelphia. I moved all the way to Seattle, and then I flunked out of my first year of university because I was having way too much fun partying. Oh, man. And had already been partying for quite a number of years. And my future, I didn't know, right? It was unwritten. My future was unwritten, and the story that I was telling myself was that it was only going to get worse. And I didn't know how to get out of it. So I decided that I would try to end my life, which I failed miserably to do, but I did try more than once. Thank you for the applause, for failing. It's truly one of the things I'm most grateful about failing at. But it is what drove me to spirituality. It is what drove me into the science of mind, and it is what drove me into the most annoying spiritual practice, which is taking responsibility for my choices. How utterly annoying, stupid, and hard. And so today, we're going to talk about choices. And it is probably the most challenging conversation to have within our conversation about prosperity and abundance. And so I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you bits and pieces of my story and the choices that I made along the way. And one of the things that I hope to illuminate is that the choices are not necessarily choices about action or doingness. They are choices about consciousness and faith. Over and over and over again, deciding what I was going to choose. So I began to learn about this idea of abundance, that we live in an abundant universe, and that the infinite nature of spirit and life is abundance. And of course, the master teacher taught, I came that they might have life and have it more abundantly, not just eternal and immortal life, but an abundant life. And one of the first miracles that is reported is the turning of water into wine at a party. Okay, that feels like abundant life, right? Not holy piety, but an abundant, joy-filled life. And I embraced that. I felt very close to nature. For me, spirit has always shown up in the natural world. I could feel it there when it was clear to me that people, they just seemed to be messed up, including myself, right? We just seemed to make a mess. And it was hard for me to see the abundance of life in human-made things, but I could sure as heck see it in nature. So I spent a lot of time with the thing that you've heard, the cliche, new thought practice of visualizing the abundance of nature. And this is not to be taken lightly. To spend time thinking about the number of stars and galaxies and the infinite number more galaxies they're finding. To literally take into your meditation how many grains of sand there are in a handful. I grew up going every other year when we weren't going to Europe. We went to the beach, to the shore, the Jersey Shore, and I could remember sitting in my meditation, trying to figure out how many grains of sand were in a handful, and remembering sitting on that beach and thinking about all the beaches. Now, I know many of us can spout that that is the way we understand abundance, but to really take it into our consciousness over and over and over and over and over again. I spent years working with this so that it would become a felt lived experience for me, and so that I would realize that that abundance was not for everybody, everything, everybody except me. How many of us suffer from a little bit of that exclusionary experience? You know, it's good for everybody else, and I can see it for you and you and you and you, but I don't know about for me. So this is the beginning choice. Am I going to focus on the essential abundance that is forever being shown to me, or am I going to focus on all the lack? Fundamental choice. Now, I spent a lot of time working with all of this for years and years and decades on abundance, and then all of a sudden I realized that I also needed to think about, what does prosperity mean to me? We have a lot of prosperity teachers, the prosperity gospel, there's all kinds of things about it. There was some things about the way prosperity was taught when I first got into New Thought that I had a little bit of trouble on, because I am fundamentally about sustainability, and so it can't be just infinite progress and infinite more stuff. And so I had a lot of trouble with that over the years. And so I began to really think about, well, what is prosperity to me? Oh, you can't, oh, there you go. Prosperity to me is enough and freedom. Do we each have enough for our lives? Notice how many of you put barely in front of that word. No, enough means enough. Like a turkey dinner when you shove yourself away from the table and you go, oh God, I've had enough. That much enough. Not barely enough. Like enough actually means what it says, enough. Enough for my life, enough for my family, my children, enough for a house, going to college, whatever it is, enough. And the freedom to have the life that Spirit is living as me, whatever that looks like to me. These are my personal definitions of abundance and prosperity. This is the first choice that we have to make. And am I going to look at my life not only through the vision, the idea of abundance, but then also to look where in my life do I actually have enough and have freedom? And where can I see it for other people? Where can I see it in the world? Where can I see it outpictured? And can I over and over and over and over and over again focus on that, work towards that without getting sucked into the constant conversation about lack and not enoughness? Another seriously profound choice. These are the choices that build a consciousness of prosperity, a consciousness of trust, a consciousness that there is, in fact, enough good. And it's not just enough good for me, it's enough good for all of us. It's enough good for everyone on the planet. It's enough good for all beings everywhere. So, fundamental choices that we make in consciousness. Now, this did not mean that while I was working on making these choices in consciousness that I practiced it all the time. So at 23, I had the wonderful experience, which many of you may have already had, of having to cut up the credit cards. Ooh, man. Yes, maxed them all out and had no possibility of figuring out how I was going to pay for them all, so cut them up I did. Ooh, couldn't get a credit card for a while after that. A lesson in choices. And I'll never forget, a prosperity teacher said it sometime, I don't even remember who it was, who said this kind of off-the-cuff statement, well, you know, the amount of your debt that you have is equal to the lack of self-esteem that you have. And I had just cut up my credit cards. So clearly, I understood the abundance of the universe, but I clearly did not believe that I was a part of it. So I had to keep buying my prosperity. Do you see? With all that debt. Whew. Yes. Choices. Choices. So one of my choices was to begin recognizing that maybe stuff wasn't a part of always my experience of abundance and prosperity. It was only part of my experience of abundance and prosperity. Then I had to learn about jobs. So my very first job as a waitress, I lasted 3 months. And I said, I'll never do that again. It was awful. I was right by a college. I worked Fridays and Saturday nights from 11 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. Guess who came to my tables? All the drunk frat boys. Ooh, man. And I was a cute little blonde chick. Ooh, it was unpleasant. And then from 3 to 7, I got all the truckers coming through. Oh no, 3 months, that was enough. Never again. I'm never going to waitress again. And do you know that I made, I can't even say the word, very little for tips because I hated my job. Aha. So my next job, I was horse and carriage driver in Center City, Philadelphia for the bicentennial. I lied about my age. I lied about the fact that I knew how to drive horse and carriages. And I lied about the fact that I'd ever been a tour guide. And they gave me the job. Of course, good enough, I had spent quite a bit of time around horses. And so they taught me how to, get my carriage out. Then I pretended that I knew what I was doing while I was watching the person showing me the tour. And I loved it. I had so much fun. I gave tours in German and I gave tours in English and I made up stuff that wasn't on the tour. It was great. It was fabulous. And you know what happened? Very shortly, I became their top booker. And I got my own horse and my own carriage every day. I got a beautiful mahogany Surrey with a fringe on top with 3 seats. I could take 9 people. 9 people, that's a lot of tips. Why? Because I loved my job. I loved the little trolley that I took in, and then I took in the elevated subway, and then I took the train. It took me, an hour and a half to get there and an hour and a half to get home, and I loved every minute of it. And I became top booker. Something was starting to become clear to me. I got a job in real estate as a commercial real estate agent at 18. The stupidest decision that person ever made to hire me. An 18-year-old cannot sell commercial real estate to a 45-year-old investor, okay? I failed miserably and I hated every minute of it. So I moved over into residential real estate, got a lovely, lovely person who was the sales manager. She went out and she wanted me to come with her when she started her own office because I loved selling people not homes, but their dreams. I sold people their dreams. And I said, do not buy this house. This is not your dream house, let me promise you. See this marble? It's picking up speed as it's going across the floor. You do not want to buy this house. But it's my dream house. No, this is your dream hellhole. Do not buy it. I made so much money that she wanted me to be a sales manager. I was 19, a sales manager of 45 and 50 and 60-year-old real estate people. Of course, I failed miserably because I stopped loving my job. Because now I was trying to share with people an idea that they thought was the stupidest thing they'd ever heard, and sure in hell was not going to take it from some little 19-year-old blonde chickie. It's awful. It was awful. And I hated every minute of it. And I remembered that there were times when I loved it. And I began to really pay attention to that. Do you see, that was one of the other things that I learned. That prosperity is that state of consciousness. If I'm giving my gift, which I was in real estate, when I was helping people create their dreams, was very different than helping somebody make money. Helping people make their dreams motivated me. Maybe it motivated some other people. They made a lot of money for helping people make money. It was very motivating to them. We have to find what motivates us. And when we are giving of our gift and passion, the universe supports it. There's no question in my mind that this is true. So then I went on to ministerial school, and it was 4 nights a week plus weekends, and it was a huge four-year program, and I needed a job because this real estate thing had failed miserably. So I decided that I needed a job that I could give my all to for 8 hours a day, close the door, and not think about it again. So I became the office manager of a securities and investment banking firm. I can't really tell you whether I loved or hated that job, but I loved that it paid for my schooling. I loved that I could give them my 8 hours to the best of my ability, close the door, and then give my all to my schooling. Do you see? And I've watched people jump from, I hate this job, to I'm going to start something brand new without building what's needed in between. And for me, that was schooling, right? So my job helped me with my dream and my passion. And so I made decent money so that I could pay for my schooling, so that I could do what my heart said would take every ounce of what I had to give, which is being in the ministry. Every ounce of what I have to give, being in the ministry. And I've loved it. And I have loved it. And, as Dawn so beautifully spoke about, one of the things that I began to do, one of the things I began to do was tithe. I learned how to pledge and to tithe. First, I learned how to pledge. Give a little more, give a little more, because I was practicing believing in the abundance of the universe. And I was practicing enoughness. Do you see, every time I pledged and I wrote that check, I said to myself, look, I have enough to write this check, whether my bank account agreed or not. Do you see? Building a consciousness of enoughness. And I would write those checks, and I would say to myself, I have enough to be generous. I have enough to give. I have enough. I had a beautiful first ministry south of Seattle. It was very lovely, and then I burnt out spectacularly. I went to my cabin in the woods. I loved it out there for 3 years. It was fabulous, and had a child, and I couldn't figure out how to make enough money. So I came to Dallas. After 15 years of having run away, I came and I called my mom, I want to come home. Can you help me? Sure enough, they let my son Jason and I come. He was 18 months old. And I went back to school because I wasn't sure whether ministry and motherhood would mix. So I went back to school, got some good scholarships, got some decent loans, and I couldn't pay my bills. So I went on food stamps. I went on food stamps for 2 years. And do you know what my work was during that time? Not to believe that that's all I deserved. Do you see? When we have a downturn, when we have a moment like that, right? Do we allow it to crush us? Oh, see, really, you really aren't abundant. You really don't deserve it. You really, what, blah, blah, blah. Or is it an opportunity to dig a little deeper in our consciousness and in our faith, to dig a little harder, a little more into it? Thank God there's food stamps. Thank God my parents are charging me a modest rent, which I was paying out of my scholarship. Thank God I have a roof over my head, and my son has a grandmother who's willing to help out while I was in school. Do you see? I worked on counting my blessings instead of saying, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm on food stamps. What? Blah, 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 beat up, beat up, beat up, diminish, diminish, diminish. No, no, no. Choices, do you see? Choices, choices, choices. A choice to act for the good of my son, and a choice to act in consciousness over and over and over again. In the time since I've been here in Dallas, here at this community, I have raised a son. I have supported a 3-person household in numerous iterations of that 3-person household. And until my current wife, I was the primary breadwinner. In both of my long-term relationships before that, I had a partner who worked for less than a year full-time. And yet we bought a house. And then we bought a house with a pool. And we went traveling, and my son, he didn't get a lot of stuff during the year, but he made out like a bandit at Christmas time. Mountains of presents. Why? Because I made a choice not to buy a lot of stuff during the year. I wanted Christmas to be special because Christmas was special for me. I wanted it to be special. And of course, he had his birthday right near Christmas, so he got birthday and Christmas. And it was a huge influx because that's what I chose. I didn't choose to spend money on him all year, buy him this, buy him that, buy him the other thing. No. We were very thoughtful about that. And I began tithing again. When I moved here and got this job and became senior minister, I instantly started pledging and started tithing again. And during that whole time, we had enough. On one salary, we had enough. And I can remember in our second home when we had bought a home and had the pool wrapped into the mortgage, and I thought, I'm really doing this. We're really doing this. Oh my gosh, we're really doing this. I can remember sitting there throughout those years when he would bring his friends over, and they loved being at our house, which is, of course, why we had the pool and the pool table, because I wanted to know what my son was doing and who he was doing it with. I'd much rather have them at my house, so I had between 2 and 10 kids at dinner virtually every night. And I remember sitting by the pool year after year after year saying to Jason, just doesn't get any better than this. I didn't shop a lot. I kept my cars for 10 years. I didn't have a lot of stuff. But man, I had enough. And I had the freedom to sit by that pool and to say, it just doesn't get any better than this. Do you see? That's a choice to find the moments, to find the ways and the places and the times where there is enough, where there is the freedom, where there is the moment where your particular idea of your life is being fulfilled, where your contribution, your particular contribution to the world is actually being used to the fullest extent. And you're sweating and panting and exhausted, and you know that you've given your all, and something has happened because of it. Enough. There's enough. There's always enough. When we start with that place in our consciousness over and over and over again, I never stopped having an amazing life. Through it all, through the ups and the downs and the changes. And my decision, one of my choices was I chose to invest in the family and family experiences. That's why I bought a house and put a pool in it. Do you see? So that we would have those family experiences. I chose to take Jason and his friends places, not buy stuff. That was my choice. Since then, I have a small condo, and ooh man, it's filled with art, because now that's my choice. To have a home, a small home, a little footprint, but it is filled with art. Again, do you see? My choice. Karen's and my choice. There's no right answer. It's your choice, your values, and what allows you to give your contribution to the world that you are here to give, and to be in that state of freedom and enoughness. So my salary has increased by $1,000 every year since I started, in chunks, not every year, but averaged out. I figured this out the other day. which is not even up to the cost of living. Not even the increase of up to the cost of living. And do you know that I've never noticed? Why? Because I have enough. And I focus on the enoughness. I focus on that abundance. I focus on the freedom, and I focus on my choices. So one of the things we talk about in prosperity is we talk about inflow and we talk about outgo, but we very seldom talk about what do we do when the good is in our pot. Are you ready? Everybody take a deep breath. We budget. Oh, you didn't run screaming from the room. I'm so glad. I ran screaming from the room the first time I heard about a budget. And then I tried to budget the way everybody else budgets, right? You got to have $50 for this every month and $100 set aside for this every month. And I did that a few times, and that was a nightmare. That does not work for me. It works for some of you, and if you're that kind of person, you should be doing it. I budgeted. I learned what worked for me was budgeting annually. I'm setting aside this much money for travel. I'm setting aside this much money for Jason's Christmas, which has to be set aside, think about ahead of time, because I don't like paying it off in January and February. No. That's not going to work for me. So I learned that what worked for me was budgeting over the course of a year, as opposed to this very week to week, month to month budget. I can't do anything that consistently. Man, I'm all over the place. And yet I understood, right, when we realize what our choices are, based on what we value, based on what's important to us, based on what we are here to give to the world and what fulfills us. And a choice means you're not choosing something else. I think this is the hardest thing for spiritual people to do when our good is in our own pot, is we believe that if we make choices about it or budget it, that we're limiting ourselves. No, what we're doing is taking responsibility. I know, right? Taking responsibility for our choices. And we can't actually blame anybody else when we have to cut up our credit cards, although I sure as heck tried. Right? Back then, I blamed it on my income, and I blamed it on the things that I felt like I needed to have, and I could find all kinds of things to blame. But none of it was true. I was the one who handed over the credit card. And I was the one who chose those jobs. And I was the one who chose that place to live. All of those were my choices. Do you see? So the ability and the willingness to spend time with how am I spending my money? Open to the abundance of the universe, knowing that the tithing and contributing is a way of declaring my faith and enoughness. The rest of it is right here. It's right here. And every piece of it is a choice. Every single piece of it is a choice. It's both a choice in action, but it is also a choice in consciousness. So the last thing, a piece of the story that I'll tell you is that starting in, 1984, I began putting into a pension plan. And I was pretty excited. Wow, I'm a grown-up. I'm working on my retirement. Oh my God, it wasn't a whole lot of money, but I was putting it in there. And it was a minister's pension plan, and every place, the two places that I've worked, they made a contribution. And so I figured it out from 1984 to 2012. For 28 years, I put money in there, or the center put money in there for me. I was proud of my choices. I was proud of that I was taking care of it. I was proud of the fact that I was doing something about my retirement, especially since I know nothing about managing money. I know nothing about investments. And I had said up until that point, money wasn't important. In 2012, after the crash of 2009, 2008, 10, and the stock market and all of that, in 2012, that pension went belly up. And it closed. And there were a lot of people living on that money. A lot of people a whole lot older than me. who were living on that money, and they had to figure out how to parcel out that money. 28 years of contribution, and I got a pittance back, and nothing towards my retirement. And I'll tell you, that was a moment of choice. Once again, how am I going to feel about this? I spent a year working with myself that I hadn't failed myself. A year that I had to keep telling myself, no, you put your money in that retirement. You did. You were taking care of yourself. No. And I cried and I raged and I beat myself up and I blamed and I did all of that. And every time I found myself, no. Not only did you contribute, but you live in an abundant universe. You live in an abundant universe. So somebody donated a 401k program here to CSLDallas. I could put my little pittance of money in there, and I have learned how to invest because I decided it was no longer appropriate to believe that women don't know anything about that. I'm speaking to you and myself. That was another choice. Do you see? Choices. Over and over. Choices of what I'm spending my money on. When Jason and I were all those years, well, I didn't go out to eat. I didn't buy a lot of stuff. I didn't do all that stuff. I invested in family and experiences. Now I invest in art and travel. Do you see? Those choices. Karen and I have had lots of conversations about what are we spending our money on. Oh, now I have a granddaughter. Can't wait till Christmas. Yeah. And you know what? Let me tell you, they are your choices. Your choices. There are people who have decided not to have a house. They live in a van, and they simply drive around from place to place. They go to van caravans. They don't believe themselves as to be homeless. They are living in vans. A choice. Choices. There are lots of unsheltered people, lots of poverty, lots of homelessness and hunger. And these are parts of our contribution that we have to make. Choices. Is my prosperity only for me? Is the abundance of the universe only for me? Or am I sharing it around? So as I told you, I started pledging in my first community, got here, pledged, and then as my salary became a full-time salary, actually started tithing. And so I was committed to my 10%, and then I realized that I was giving more than that, and I counted it up. It was 12%. Last year, or the year before, Karen and I counted up our contributions. We actually give away 20% of our income. That's our contribution because we believe in the prosperity of everybody else too. And we have enough. We have enough to give and to share. And it's something I've wanted to be since I was 10. I remember at 10 years old saying, I'm going to become a philanthropist. And I'm going to become a patron of the arts. So I buy art. Maybe it's not thousands of dollars worth of art, but I buy art because I love that creative spark. And I'm better at buying it and being an audience than I am of making it. We need some of those too, right? Choices. So, an amazing life. You can, in fact, absolutely continually grow your amazing life. I think the pieces of your amazing life, my amazing life, is one, the contribution I'm willing to make with my work and my money. Two, the fulfillment that I receive, which means paying attention to every time the good is there. Every time spirit and love and joy and beauty is present, to pay attention, mark it. Man, it just doesn't get any better than this. If I could say that every single day, I would know that spirit was flowing through my life. That there is, in fact, enough, and that we are free to make those choices. And that we want more than anything else for everyone else to be that free. To me, this is what we do with the pot when our good is in our hands. So I just invite you this week. I know you're going to be doing it in the home study program. Think about your budget. Think about where and how you're spending your money. Think about your choices and build your own thriving and amazing life.